In a world where Twitter leads the headlines and the 24-hour news cycle forces people to choose sides, we're here to help you cut through the noise and discover that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Hosted by entrepreneur, author, public speaker, and regular media contributor Seth Denson. Subscribe, share, rank, and review. Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle on the Real News Communication Network.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Monday. I'm already tongue-tied, twistered. Didn't take long. Welcome back. You are Somewhere in the Middle. I am Seth Denson. Zach, how are you, buddy?
Well, my mic's on, so that's a good start.
Man, it's Monday.
Man, let me tell you.
I'm telling you, we're starting off right. We're starting off right.
Stumbling.
Joined, as always, by Mr. Zach Lewis in the booth.
Hi.
Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks.
And, of course, Mr. Andrew Clark over here in his fashionable vest.
Happy Monday.
That's a nice vest.
How are you, buddy?
Thank you. I'm doing good.
And joined here in studio today by, and you know what? This is me. Man, I am all over the place today.
I was going to say, I'm hearing an echo.
It's my stuff.
Oh, man.
Mike Badgley. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing outstanding.
Good. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Listen, so just kind of introduce Mike a little bit. So I met Mike a little over a week ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're in the same industry. We do a lot of similar work together on the risk management side, healthcare, analyzing, things like that. So had invited Mike to come in and visit, spend some time with us this week in our offices, and didn't realize that he was flying, literally landing right before our show today. And so I said, hey, why don't you just come up to the studio and hang out while we do the show? Well, after visiting for a little bit, said, hey, you want to actually put a headset on and come join us? And he agreed. And I think that Mike will bring something fun to the conversation for two reasons. One, he's from the left coast.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So, Andrew.
Zing.
Yeah, I mean, like a kindred spirit over here.
San Francisco in the house.
I know. So, but maybe he falls a little bit like me in the middle on things.
Yep, very true.
Former Marine.
Yep, once a Marine, always a Marine.
So Andrew politely asked him to sit between us. I think Andrew might have some things he wants to say and needs Mike to intervene to make sure I don't come across the table today. Because no question, Mike's sitting down, and for those of you that watch the show versus just listen to it on podcast, 6'6"?
Yep, 6'6" to about 270.
Yeah. I won't be trying to go through him for anything. And a former Marine, so likely he could be 5'2" and 110, and I wouldn't try to go through him for anything. But given your perspectives on where you're from, where you live, how you operate your now corporate career, but you have a different perspective being former military.
Correct, yep.
And then when you left the military, you became a first responder, a police officer.
I did.
So thank you for your service on all sides of that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we won't necessarily put you through the grinder of an interview today, but we will invite you to join the conversation and be part of it. So for those of you this is your first time listening, this is Somewhere in the Middle, where we take on issues of the day from a middle perspective, right? We don't, oftentimes the microphone is taken up by the far right and the far left, and I like to think that most of the movement happens in the middle, and that's what we want this show to be about, is a real conversation about where the middle is on things. And so that's what we're going to take on today. It was, we'll call it a tough week for America this week. And Andrew and I were talking about this before the show today, and I said, do I just start off with this? Do we just go there? And Andrew said, well, you start low, you'll end low. And so I want to give some hope. I want to give hope. And so we're going to talk about a little bit of what happened last week. For those of you that aren't living under a rock, obviously we had a situation happen in Pittsburgh over the weekend where a synagogue was shut up while having their worship service, and just a really sad deal. And I think we need to talk about that. And so we're going to get around to that towards the end, because I think where I land on that, hopefully you'll stick around and listen to that, because really hard. It weighed heavily, still does, but I think we can walk away with some hope for who we are as a society. But that's going to take you and me. It's going to take all of us stepping up and realizing that good is good, and we can be good again. So, yeah, with that, let's just kind of, we took last week off, so we're running a little bit behind as far as catching up on the topics of the day. I think after the show we had a couple of weeks ago, it was a good timing to take a week off.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of good feedback from that show, positive and negative, and that's okay.
I can't imagine why.
It's all part of the conversation. If you want to know what we're talking about, go back and download podcast 16. Was it 16?
Episode 16.
Episode
It was a good
16.
one. I liked it.
I
yeah.
thought it was good.
Yeah.
Listen, inevitably, I'm going to stumble on some stuff and offend somebody, but hey, that's life. We're all offendable. Speaking of offendable, you guys got your Halloween costume set up?
You know, I did, but I think I have to throw it out. So
Oh, no.
I'm telling you, you got to be careful about Halloween costumes now, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some deplorables out there, since, we like using the word deplorable around here. I'm sorry. Whoever invented a sexy Anne Frank costume, there is a very nice warm corner of hell for you.
those words just don't go together.
That's just awful. I mean, come on.
Right.
Please don't Google that phrase. Don't worry about it. Just take our word on it.
We're not even going there. But so it's interesting. So Jen and I, great weekend. So my wife and I had the rare occasion of a weekend with just us. So Jenna's folks reached out to us towards the end of last week and said, hey, we missed the girls. Why don't you let them come stay with Grandpa and Gigi for a couple of days? And me and my wife went, really? Okay.
Promise.
Twist my arm. Love my kids. But, listen, it's one of those things that sometimes it's nice to have some time with your spouse. And so we did what most people, that are hipsters like us do, in that we went and saw an early movie at 7 p.m. on Friday, and we're nicely in bed by, I think, 9:30. And then Saturday, because we're really cool and it was like the weekend of all of the Halloween parties, we forewent that and went to a Brazilian steakhouse, gorged on meat, and we're in bed watching Dateline by 8:30 on Saturday night.
Slow down.
This
Good
is
stuff. Yeah.
awesome, man. It was greatness. So got up, went to church on Sunday, had brunch after church. You didn't have to. You weren't running around to get kids ready for things. It was really
all
really
this
nice.
free time.
Yeah.
So I'm driving after church. We're going to Jenna's parents to pick up the girls, and I'm going relatively slow. I'm enjoying my nice little leisurely Sunday driver pace. And Jenna goes, Grandpa, are we going to get there someday? What's your problem? I'm like, I'm just savoring the last few minutes before noise. Taking it all in. We have this
Or it all
last few
falls
minutes.
apart.
But, it's interesting, though. I mean, so this was literally the first time we've had 2 nights in a row without the kids in our house. We missed them. It was, this isn't right. We knew we were picking them up on Sunday, but it was hard. So anyway, that was my weekend. I did learn, though, anybody that's been to a Brazilian steakhouse, for those of you that don't know, they're called churrascarias, I think is what they're called. There's a great one here in Dallas called Fogo de Chao. I think they've got them somewhere other parts of the country too. But this is literally where people are walking around with fresh meat, and you can just keep eating. And the place here in Dallas, Fogo de Chao, it's in a nice area. It's you kind of get snazzed up a little bit, as snazzy as people get in today's world. But we're sitting there, so Jen and I are waiting to be sat, and in walks a guy with a pair of sweatpants on. And everybody's just kind of looking at you. You got kids' proms or homecoming dances going on, so you got kids in tuxedos and formals, and then those of us that are without kids or looking for a reason to actually wear a shirt that's ironed on the weekends. And then walks this guy in sweatpants. And we all look at him, and you can tell they're judging this guy. And I started to, and then I realized this is the most brilliant man in America. He is at an all-you-can-eat steakhouse, and he is wearing super stretch waistband pants.
He was prepared.
He was prepared. So, unlike him, we are prepared as well for today's show. And so what I thought we would do is kind of shift around and talk a couple of things. We are nearing midterms. We'll talk about that. Shout out to the Boston Red Sox. Anybody that watched the game last night, stayed up late. Those of you that know, I'm a huge baseball fan. If you're watching, I'm wearing my baseball cufflinks today.
Oh, yeah.
For today's show. And I did spend some time in Boston early on in my life, and so when I lived in Boston, or I should say lived there, but spent some time there, you have to become a Boston Red Sox fan, or you need somebody like Mike walking you around to protect you, because those people take their sports seriously. So it was fun to watch the game last night. Andrew, did you take in any of the baseball game? Not a big baseball guy?
No time this weekend.
Okay, all right. Good game. Listen, it was a great series. Even though the Red Sox won it 4-1, by no means was it that close or that separated. Every game was close. Every game was a barn burner, and it was a lot of fun to watch. So, congratulations going out to the Boston Red Sox today. Let's talk about midterms.
Ooh.
Where are we at?
Hard pivot.
I know, right? Boston Red Sox to midterms. Where are we thinking? Listen, we don't project races anymore. I think we all learned our lesson in 2016 on that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna double down on my bet from a few months back, which is Democrats take the House, don't take the Senate.
Okay.
That seems to be where everybody's leaning, I think, right?
Yeah, listen, I was there, and of course, we've been looking at Real Clear Politics. I think, Zach, you've pulled them up for us right here.
Actually got some live production here.
It has been interesting to watch these races shift over time. But, Zach, pull that map back up for a second.
Let's take a look at this.
And interestingly enough, so Texas, where we are here, has moved back into the likely, I guess, Republican or leans Republican. GOP.
Leans GOP, yeah.
So, even though Ted Cruz doesn't even own his website, right?
Yep.
So this was a fun thing. I mean, so again, regardless of where you come down on the politics side of this, I got to call the Ted Cruz campaign and say, you guys were a little asleep at the wheel on this one. So if you were to go to www.tedcruz.com, Zach, any way we could do that on live production real quick?
You're going to see this on your screen, but I swear it looks pretty natural for everybody else at home. Yeah, tedcruz.com.
Somebody should have gotten fired on this one.
There was a real nervous staff volunteer somewhere.
So I did wonder, and of course we didn't have the time to go research this. Was this years ago somebody bought Ted Cruz's site? No, Andrew.
No, this expired just a few weeks back. This expired mid-campaign.
Oh my gosh!
So for those of you who are just listening on podcast and you didn't download the virtual version of this episode, if you go to tedcruz.com, it says vote and support Beto O'Rourke.
I almost have to appreciate like the simplicity. They didn't do some big mock-up website. Nope, it's a black box with white text.
It says it all.
Yeah.
Vote
and they even did the
support.
free site because it says powered by Website Builder, which means that they didn't want to pay to have this site built.
Like the text, it's not even centered. Like they didn't care.
It's just like, hey, guess what? If you go to tedcruz.com, we're telling you to vote for Beto. So
savage.
How was that not on a checklist somewhere?
Yeah.
From a business, you're a business owner. I imagine your website is booked out. Hopefully, another 10 years. That's on recurring pay somewhere.
I know that we do get the little bit panicked moment anytime we see those canceled, or we get the notification from whomever is hosting the site of, hey, your credit card expired or something. It's like, oh my gosh, hurry up! Not that we have a lot of people out there waiting to buy our site up to come get us. If I was running for Senate, we probably would. And maybe that would be a necessary thing to maybe pay attention to. So I do kind of wonder how we're managing the budget when we can't manage our websites. But nonetheless, Texas is looking like it's going to go for Cruz.
Right.
He was pulling up 9%, I saw.
Yeah.
Which is
just outside the margin of error.
Yeah, I was going to say, which is staunch. I think it's worth noting. In 2014, who was it? Governor Greg Abbott, I think, won Texas by 30 points. Now they've got him within 9. So that's something, right? That's a battle.
Yeah, I think so. But if you're looking at the map, and again, if you're watching, we've got the map pulled up right now. If you're looking at this, look up to the far left. The ones that they're saying are pretty well in Democrats' hand. That's 44 seats, and then Republicans got 50 seats. Toss-ups are 6. So even if all 6 of those, which is highly unlikely, end up going by way of the Democrats, the GOP still maintains power.
Right.
Because Pence will cast the tiebreaker.
That's right.
Vote.
So, and they maintain the chairmanships and all of that. On the House, though, that's a little different story. The House of Representatives is looking a little bit more like it's likely going to go Democratic, although I think that we all should take caution in polling, right? If we learn nothing from 2016, it's that sometimes the polls aren't right, and that we Americans are a fickle bunch. And we maybe tell pollsters one thing but do another, perhaps?
Every day.
Yeah.
Great state of Washington's actually up for re-election, Mike. What do you think? Is that one's pretty a solid blue state there?
No, it's solid blue 2 counties that sway the entire state.
Okay.
The rest of the state is staunchly conservative.
No kidding.
Yeah, you've got King and Snohomish County, and sometimes Pierce County will switch over blue to red. But yeah, those 2 counties have all the population. The rest of the state, it is agriculture and straight conservative.
But just not enough belly buttons.
Yeah, just not enough people.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that into the electoral college conversation someday. We're going to get back to that.
Oh, man.
Zach?
Love to. Hey, we will go toe-to-toe on electoral college, and you'll beat me, and it'll be horrible.
2
but it'll be
counties
fine.
decide a whole state. You see that?
Well, hey, we've got arguably we've got the opposite problem in Texas. All right, all big cities here, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, they all vote blue, but all the rural areas are red, so that keeps us conservative. So a little column A, little column B.
Don't
right?
bring logic to this conversation.
How dare you, sir?
Anyways.
So, any hot sports opinions on anybody thinking that this doesn't go House of Representatives to the Democrats, Senate remains in the fateful hands of the GOP?
What is the order in which they get announced? When is Texas? I'm bad at this game. I know Iowa usually starts in the presidential election. When do we see Texas's results? When will we know Texas Cruz, like Beto or Cruz?
Well, they can't do anything till the polls close, right? Because then that would sway one way or the other. But I think that, listen, early reporting will be out 9, 10 o'clock. I think we know. Unless it's too close to call, and it could be. Listen, this is all about turnout. You hear it time and again. This is all about turnout.
Yep.
Right? And right now, it's showing that more and more people have turned out to vote early for those states that offer early voting. Then it's equal to the 2016 election. So we're a motivated bunch this time around, right?
Seems to be. Stakes are pretty high.
Which arguably, this is a silver lining kind of thing for me. I think overall is a good thing, right? The American body politic is perking up and going, hey, we should pay attention to how we're governed. Overall, that seems to be a net gain, I think, that more people are voting, right? Like that's... No?
Well, sorry, not to cut you off, Seth.
No, go ahead.
So like we were talking in the office about on the 6th, like a lunch break, like someone bring, who's ever got the largest car, and we'll all just go to the poll together. Let's just do it. Let's take a lunch break and let's go vote. But you start talking and it's like, oh, well, who have you researched? Oh, nobody yet. It's like,
then don't go vote, please.
And that's kind of where I'm like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm just going to drive my tiny car with just me in it today. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not to knock my coworkers in the office. You know, everyone's got lives, but if that whole phrase of just vote, don't just vote. Please read about the person. You know?
Do some research.
I mean, I don't know who that person is. I don't know what he does or what he stands for. It's just an R or a D. Don't vote that way, please.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. As I'm looking at what keeping in mind what you just said, if we look at this map, again, Zach, pull it up one more time for me here. If I'm looking at this map, you know what the most telling part of this map is?
Which state?
Tennessee.
Tennessee. What's going on in Tennessee? Hold on. Let me look at this.
Apparently, T-Swift Nation
Oh, no.
is not moving the needle.
Oh, man.
Where are you, T-Swifters?
Be still my heart.
I know. So if you want to, go back and listen to Somewhere in the Middle, episode 15, and you'll hear our hot sports takes on that one. But can we now go to Hollywood and all the celebrities and say, please do us a favor and shut up in the near future? Like, just don't.
Well, and it will be curious because they got, again, I remember the number being they had as many people register in one night as had registered in the 5 months prior. Mm-hmm. So it'll be curious when they do the whole tally at the end if that number matches at all.
Yeah.
I'll be curious.
Again, I mean, listen, the election's not over. It's in leaning status. But and Tennessee is a very conservative state for the most part. I think is it Marsha Blackburn there? Is that go ahead, Zach? Click on that one for me.
Marsha Blackburn.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that is her name.
Yes.
Senator from Tennessee.
Oh, God. Here's where. Okay, there it is. I was like, here's where the whole
Marsha
world finds
Blackburn,
out. I don't know where
Phil
Tennessee
Perez.
is on a map. Look, I went to radio school. All right. I didn't go to political geographic school. Yeah, I think it's Marsha Blackburn.
Yeah. So that one's an interesting one. And then, but it looks like what she's showing right now. Okay. I mean, she's got a good 5-point lead, 6.5.
Yeah.
Overall. And then one more back. Let's look at Florida. Because Florida, to me, is the one that always just kind of.
Florida's never dictated
Vegas
a major.
won't touch Florida anymore, will they?
Yeah.
Like they're not going there.
2000. What happened in 2000?
Yeah. So if we look at Florida, you got Bill Nelson, and he is running against current Governor Rick Scott. Mm-hmm. Still showing Nelson up 2.6% if you average all of the polls together. Scott's ahead in 2 of the polls, and then tied in 1, and then Nelson's got the rest of them. But man, Florida is all about turnout, right? Because that wasn't even close when it came to Trump. By the time the Panhandle got out there and voted, that thing wasn't even close. I remember watching the 2016 returns, and obviously Florida being in the East Coast time zone, at least the vast majority of Florida. I think one little sliver of it is in Central time zone. But I remember them coming out. I think I was watching CNN on the returns in 2016, and I remember CNN coming out and saying, well, Florida's looking like it's going to go. It's too close to call, but it's looking like it's going to go for Hillary. And I'm sitting there looking at the returns, and I'm going, wait a minute. This is neck and neck, and the only counties that have come in are like Broward County and, these typically fairly blue counties. The Panhandle hadn't even come in yet. And that's a bunch of...
It was
Trump, Make America Great Again. That's
yeah.
where I think the majority of the hats were sold, right? Is in the Panhandle of Florida. So
49.1 to 47.8. That's how that ended up landing. 49% Trump, 40.
Well, that was the final.
That was the
final.
final.
Okay, so it was closer than I thought it was.
It was within 115,000 votes.
Okay,
I mean,
so closer than I thought. But
which in a 10 million population state, that is close.
That is close, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. All right. Anybody not think that the Democrats take the House?
I'll tell you what, and this is the weird part of me that likes the idea of chaos. I love it when polls don't go the way everybody thinks. I love it. There's something about it. There's something about humanity saying, you know what, we looked at the whole scene, we think this is the way it's going to go, and then it not going that way that I just love.
This isn't an underdog story. This is politics.
I know, but that was a thing in 2016. Trump beating every poll was there's something about it that's just very I don't know.
It was huge.
It's like watching a house
Huge.
fire, I guess. I don't know.
Just can't look away.
Seeing the chaos and seeing everybody throw their hands up in the air and go, but the polls, the numbers, we thought we had it. We never know. We never really know. But personally, it's probably going to go the way everybody thinks, right? I guess it all comes down to turnout, right, Seth? That's the whole deal.
Listen, I think that's absolutely right, and it's a great point, Zach. That's a brilliant statement right there. It's all about turnout. I think that maybe if you haven't trademarked that one, you should, because it is. And what's interesting is we kind of think through this a little bit, though. We were talking about a blue wave 6 weeks ago.
Sounds about right.
What happened? I know what happened. The Kavanaugh hearings happened.
Oh, yeah.
And you had a group of somewhat not motivated voters on the right who said, you know what? While I may not love the direction what the GOP has done as of late, I do not like the way that this one was handled. And I think the Democrats did themselves a huge disservice by how they handled the Kavanaugh hearings. Any thoughts on that?
No, I'm on 100% agreement with that as well.
How did that play out up north where you are? I'm curious.
It was interesting. You had two sides. It's interesting community. I'm up there because I'm kind of tied into both sides of it. And you had one side that was all saying, well, if anybody's ever accusing this in any kind of job, they're not getting the job, period. And then there's the other side of it going, well, he's going for a Superior Court judge, that there really needs to be due process, and there is no due process. It's the court of public opinion. So there was a lot of talk back and forth that actually made quite a waves up there. I don't know if anybody really made any action, just a lot of people getting in verbal fights over it. Mm-hmm. But it was a very interesting discussion. But yeah, I really do believe the Democrats did themselves a disservice, because everybody's looking at it going, well, this guy just got crucified in the court of public opinion.
Right.
There was, where's the evidence? And, I had to throw water on that as well. So I did a lot of work in law enforcement investigating sexual crimes. And they are always going back saying, well, she couldn't remember the exact date. truth is, I had 2 cases where we had the exact date of a sexual crime pinned down, and we tied it down to an either text or an email. Other than that, you're having to ask questions. Is it dark out? Is it light out? Your brain kind of blocks that. So that, for me, a lot of people said, well, you should remember that kind of stuff. No, you don't.
Well, and this is before text and all the other stuff that you used as a law enforcement officer, right? So
So I mean, this is many, 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 many years ago. And it's just a hard thing to do because, I mean, I believe something happened to her, whether it's Kavanaugh or not. That's the hard thing to, pin down. But at the same time, there's no evidence. How can we convict somebody without evidence? Even as law enforcement, when I didn't have evidence of somebody, they went free.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, right? I mean, we live in a society where, given the 24-hour news cycle and the ability to take information and spread it without any verification or validation, again, I'm not taking a side on either coin here. I'm just saying, I looked at this as a dad. I looked at this as a business owner. I looked at this as a guy. I looked at this as a human being and said, if the same were said about me, it would be literally my word against theirs. And where does the burden of proof fall now? And, I know we did a whole episode on this, and I don't want to necessarily redo that episode. But I think that when it comes back into politics here, the vast majority of American people are not far right or far left. They're in the middle. And middle American people who think in the middle, regardless of where you might lean, are, I think, very common sense oriented folks who say, let's get away, let's strip out all the noise, all of the voices that we're never going to be open-minded to look at this anyway. And we've got to lay a certain foundation of this is the process that we need to go through. And that common sense was not applied in any aspect of that thing.
Oh, no.
And I think that's what the Democrats are. It's hurting them now because now I think that the Republican Party, or maybe even the independent or middlers, right, those in the middle that aren't far right, who are saying, I don't really have a reason to get out and vote on this one this time because I'm frustrated with Congress, I'm frustrated with the Senate, and I'm just not motivated. Now they're motivated, but they're motivated in a way of, I can't let that stand that way that was handled.
Something that stood out to me about that, because I heard that from other people, conservatives, who said, man, after Kavanaugh, I can't wait to go vote. And that was weird to me because I felt like people have been talking about a blue wave since 2016, right? People have been talking, I mean, there's so much that the left has found that has made them bitter. It felt odd to hear conservatives stand on one thing and say, this is the thing I got to go vote for. After 2 years of all this, and maybe I've just been hearing one side of the argument for so long. Did the rest of you find that being a thing? They were like, people would say Kavanaugh specifically is getting me to go vote. That's the thing that really got me out of the polls? Or is that just the most recent thing? Is that what we all seem to have focused on in the rear view right now?
Yeah, I think that there were 2 things from that, and I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on this too. But I think that, one, if we just look at history, midterms historically do not go well for the party that has the White House, right? Yeah. Especially in a polarized situation like we're in now with President Trump and the rhetoric that surrounds him. I think Republicans or people that maybe even lean conservative needed something to motivate them. They needed something to say, I'm going to come out on this.
The Benghazi of the midterms.
That's right. And this was that thing.
Nice.
This was that. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
good analysis.
The emails of the midterms. Yeah.
Yeah, they needed something to say, I'm going to take a stand, because there was nothing to take a stand for, right? You know, the GOP. I actually did a kind of an op-ed that some of the talking points were used by Fox and a couple others that I wrote on this, and it was, you know, specifically around healthcare. You know, the GOP rallied every election since the passage of the Affordable Care Act of, this is bad, you gotta elect us so we can fix this. And they got it. They got it. And what did they do? Nothing. They couldn't get it done. And so the challenge that the GOP has, they didn't have the Affordable Care Act. This was top of mind in every election since 2010 when that was signed into law. The GOP ran on this. This was their flag in the ground. They can't touch that right now.
Yep.
They can't go there. And the Democrats are seizing on that right now. So the only Republicans that are going out and voting with healthcare at the top of their mind, or I shouldn't say the Republicans, the only voters that are going out and voting with healthcare at the top of their mind are those that are getting benefits from the Affordable Care Act. And we all know where they're going to go. Mm-hmm. So the GOP didn't have that to lean on. It became about Kavanaugh. It became about due process. It became about, do we just crucify someone on the word of another versus any evidential proof?
Which is an interesting dynamic, because now that you mention that, you're right. I've been hearing a lot of Democrats saying the party should be rallying around Medicare for all.
Yep.
Healthcare.
Yeah.
Interesting point. I hadn't considered that. You're right.
And that's the thing. And so I think that the Republicans can leverage that a little bit from a Medicare for all perspective. And the Democrats aren't doing themselves any favors by going so far to the Medicare for all perspective of things. But what they could do is say, hey, listen, there's a lot of people out there right now that if not for the Affordable Care Act would not be insured, would not have coverage, would not have protections. They could be bringing those people forward. The problem is, and this is, again, from a political science perspective, both parties flub the narrative so badly because it's like they want to go so far. The Democrats could own health care this election. So what do? They don't double down on what they've done and say, look at what we did. They say, Medicare for all. Well, wait a minute. Now you've just perked everybody who said, I didn't want a single-payer system to begin with. So why not just stand on the merit of what the ACA has done for some and double down on that? But no, we got to go so far as to go Medicare for all. It's like, come on, people, stop catering to the far extremes on both sides of this deal, the far left and the far right.
Free college, abolish ICE.
Yeah.
And just, yeah.
I don't know. Any other thoughts on midterms and where we are there?
Go ahead, Andrew. I was going to say, I've got one, but I feel like it might be throwing a monkey wrench in here.
I love
and
monkey
I'm afraid
wrenches.
of that.
Let's go.
So,
Come on.
You go.
Bring it on.
Me? All right. Okay. Here's this. The caravan. Yeah? There's that monkey wrench?
Yeah.
You got it?
5,000 troops being deployed to the Mexico border.
I have heard it said that there are some people in Washington that think the caravan may be a wedge on the midterms that is advantageous to one side over the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that, but is that a thing? Is it worth? Is it a thing you can leverage, or is it a thing that's happening? To me, it feels like. I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I think that's good.
Present that.
I don't know, Mike. How's that playing out up north?
Yeah.
Honestly, there's not been a lot that I've heard up there.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because it's so far away from us up there that just nobody's really talking about it.
Yeah. I think, here's my opinion. There's nothing scientific about this. I think we've numbed ourselves to this.
There's a lot we've numbed ourselves to in the country. But yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
That's
well,
a good one.
and
Yeah.
listen, that'll be our segue to this next topic that we're about to talk about. But I think that we are. I think we have numbed ourselves to this idea of immigration and where we are on that. And because it got grabbed so early on in this upward movement forward, I don't think that helps the Democrats. I think it potentially helps the Republicans, only because it's going to motivate that far right base that immigration is their top thing.
Mm-hmm. Right up until there's a picture of a National Guardsman pointing an M16 at a pregnant mom carrying her baby.
Right.
That's what I was saying. It depends.
Does
if
it
they get
happen
there
before November 6th?
Yes, because there is no way that you can put dirty, hungry, tired people, regardless of their intent, in a photograph. Give me your huddled
Tired,
masses.
bored.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then crisp, clean American military uniforms with an APC on the Rio Grande. It's not a good picture.
Yeah, listen, I think that it'll be interesting how that plays out. I think right now it's probably, as the pendulum swings, advantage Republicans right now.
I think so.
I would say unless they get there first.
Unless they get there first and we get that Time magazine shot that everybody will get.
They're supposed to be like 100,000 miles away from the border or something. Like, they're pretty far off, I think. I could be completely wrong, by the way. Again, radio school. So
they're supposed to get there right about mid-November. So right now it's looking like they're going to get there after.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I think that'll play it out. But I think that middle America, and even as you're seeing up in Seattle, Tacoma, where you live, I just don't think this is getting as much play right now.
Yeah.
We're not separating children from parents and all of that, and I just don't think this is playing out. I think right now the key drivers are healthcare, the economy, and guns are back in the spotlight.
Somebody was also sending bombs this past week.
Oh, yeah, we didn't even talk about
Sorry,
that.
not to
Yeah.
No, that's where I was going. I was going to go into kind of guns, violence, bombs, and all of this. I think that here again, and this is a take that I have on this. I don't know that the bomb thing moved the needle, and here's why. It went to congressional candidates, congressmen and women. It did go to the Obamas and the Clintons, sounds like.
And Robert De Niro's restaurant.
Yeah, that one was weird.
CNN got one, let's not forget.
Yeah, CNN.
Sure.
Who?
I think that, again, the American public, the majority of American public realized this was a whack job.
Oh, yeah.
Who, I know that everybody tried to pivot to rhetoric. Like, oh, this, and I did find it interesting that Trump in one sentence was saying, let's stop the rhetoric, and then the next sentence was calling somebody stupid, and so it's like, all right, come on.
Right.
Let's pick one horse and ride it. But, this whole idea, I don't think the American people cared about the bombing thing. American people do care about 11 people getting shot and killed yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or Saturday. And I think that what happened on Saturday at the Jewish synagogue, and another story that did not make much of the mainstream media that happened out of Kentucky, I think also on Friday or Saturday. Man tried to effectively force his way into an African-American church. When he was unsuccessful in getting through the doors, decided he would go to a local grocery store and target black people. Killed 2. I think these are the things that wake up the American public and say, and this is where the American public, I don't think, takes a political side as much as they take something's got to change. And it does. And does political rhetoric get advanced through this? Does it help fuel the fire? I hate hearing this supremacist talk and it being tied to anything. And in fairness to President Trump, by no means do I think that he is a white supremacist. I know that there are some of you that probably do, and that's your opinion on it. I don't believe he is, but I don't believe he's done enough to shut it down and say, I want him to come out like Kavanaugh did and say, do not associate me with that, period. And he doesn't do that.
Yeah, that's true. That even went back to the election when there was some of that stuff going on. Some of the supremacy groups were supporting
David Duke.
him.
Yeah.
And he never said anything really to kind of throw that objection out.
There was violence on both sides.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, we saw that. And again,
sir,
we live in such a polarized society right now. I mean, we won't get into it today, but I mean, Megyn Kelly loses a television show because she said something about blackface that was ignorant, totally ignorant. I went back and watched it. It was dumb, but there was nothing malicious in what she said. It was ignorant. And she lost her job and a contract. Now, again, this is a whole show. I could argue that NBC was looking for a reason to get rid of her because the ratings were terrible. But again, if that was something that offended somebody, for the comment about blackface, for those of you that didn't follow what was happening there, she made a comment about Halloween costumes. Again, we're talking about Halloween costumes. Oh, yeah. The downfall of civilization will happen because of Halloween costumes. Right? But she made some comment about, what's the big deal? Well, okay, upstate New Yorker, that's dumb. We in the South know that's dumb. Don't talk about blackface.
Yeah, don't have a panel of 4 white folks on talking about blackface.
And the other 3 folks said,
not good look.
Yeah, you got a problem here. You don't want to talk about that. And she kind of tried to walk it back immediately, like, oh, did I say something stupid? And then it came out the next day with this huge mea culpa, and too late. Didn't matter. Right? This is the society that we live in now, in that everybody's on edge, and everybody's offendable, and some of them rightly so. I don't want to downplay that. There are some people who absolutely, shouldn't wear blackface. That absolutely ties a direct link to some horrible parts of our society that still exist today, and that existed in open air constantly in just a couple of generations ago. But this whole issue on can we not just everybody come out? Let's all hold hands right and left and say, white supremacists, you're stupid and we don't like you and we all will stand against you. You're wrong.
Yeah, I'm willing to put that one on record. Yeah.
All right, we got a couple.
okay with
Okay,
that.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Anybody
I'll
else?
get on that,
Yeah. So I think, again, somewhere in the middle, we can all come together and shut this thing down. Yep. What we need our leaders to do is not, give any semblance that it's okay. Leave no room for interpretation. But also don't use it for political gain or gamesmanship or to drive a wedge. So I think that as we enter into the midterms, these are the things that can and might move the needle. Because I think what happened over the weekend awakens people to say the rhetoric has to change. And when people go, the rhetoric needs to change, they typically look at those in power and say they need to change. So I think that if there is a movement that will happen over the coming days, I think that could drive it. Any additional thoughts on that, guy?
I just got to say, it makes me laugh. Have you guys ever seen the pictures of the master race, they call it? The white supremacists?
Was the blonde hair and the blue eyes?
Oh, God.
Do they have to be German?
I'm
Andrew?
sorry,
Do you
that was
know?
bad.
Do you-
I'm sorry. That was ignorant, and I apologize. That was my opinion, and I'm
You
sorry.
gotta take a look at some of these master race guys' photos.
Oh, yes.
If these guys think they're the master race that's superior, seriously, you got to look them up.
You're talking like 300-pound guy,
Oh,
Bubba.
yeah, the cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
Best of the best.
And listen, I think that's it. I think that we all would agree that it is the most ignorant amongst us that stand up. No person with common sense looks at this and says, "Boy, there's something masterful about that."
Tiki torches outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, impressive. What?
Yeah. I mean, can we not? This is where freedom is in conflict with what is right. And I don't mean far right. I mean correct.
Good correction.
Right? Because these are the challenges in a free society. Is you have these facets, which to me are despicable, and they should be resisted with everything. Should shut them down in any way possible. But how do you do that constitutionally?
You can't put tape over their mouths, but we can all tell you to shut up.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's. Oh gosh.
It does. It's
again,
hard.
we'll get groups of 4 of us like this that'll all say you're an idiot. We can do it.
Yeah.
Well,
We just did.
this was a problem we talked about way back when we talked about Alex Jones, right? Getting
Yeah.
kicked off Facebook.
We were just talking
and
about him
Twitter.
earlier.
The
Yeah.
issue we're running into is the, and I know we don't have enough time to talk about this on the show, but the deplatforming. Because that's it. It's not that you can't say it. It's that there will be no platform for you to say it.
That's
on.
right.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I mean, yes. I don't know.
But you can't stop him from going on a corner and shouting. You can't. He has the right to do that. But we get to walk by and be like, moron.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we all should, right?
Yeah.
We should.
Yes.
Because he is a moron.
Yeah.
They are morons.
Makes sense.
And for them, in the corner of my world, there is no room for in any way, shape, form, or capacity. Period.
True.
You know, and I think that this is kind of goes into the last point that I want to make on this. As we enter, it'll be interesting to see how the midterms kind of shake out. And listen, we still have a week and a half.
Ooh.
The world could turn over in a week and a half in today's cycle. It could.
Oh, no.
But I think here's what I hate is when what happened this past weekend begins to define who we are. Because that one person who did that awful thing, there is a special place in hell reserved for him. And it is unconscionable. He does not define me or my country or what we stand for. Period. But every country has evil within it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same message I try to teach my children. Evil has been present in the world since the beginning of time. And while it will never be completely eradicated during our lives, we must stand up against it. There is no room for arguing with it. There is no room for justifying it. And there is no room for coddling it. You call it out. I hope that our leaders do that. They don't pivot to the media. They don't pivot to people using this for gain. They call it what it is. Evil. And that's my take. Good show, guys. Good being back after a couple of weeks. Little off the rails a couple times. That's okay.
Dusting off the
That's
cobwebs.
normal Monday
It's
thing.
fine. It's fine.
You know. We will be back with you next week, although we won't do it on Monday. Because from a personal perspective, it's NASCAR weekend in Texas. And for those of you that are regular listeners to the show, you know that I will not miss an opportunity for NASCAR in Texas, which means that I won't wrap up there till Monday. So we'll get with the great folks here at Real News Communication and set up another time to come in and do our show next week. Tune in live. Look for us on Wednesday, as Where I Land on This will be posted to our site. You'll be able to catch it there, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Mike, thanks for coming in, man.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks
for
for
having me
your
on.
service to our country. I appreciate that.
No, it was my pleasure. It's a great experience, and you've developed some of the greatest bonds with some of the best people out there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
Andrew, thanks, buddy.
Happy Monday.
Yeah, Zach, thank you, man.
Thank you.
To all the folks here at Real News Communications that made this one happen, thank you. To my beautiful daughters, Emerson and Arabella, and my beautiful wife, Jenna. Thank you. Daddy loves you. Thanks for letting me be who I am and be part of this. And as we think about the events of this last weekend, really the last 5 minutes of what we've been talking about here, while I may be considering a number of things, I do know where I land on this. America is good. No. America is great. It has been and it continues to be. I feel like I need to remind everyone of that right now. Since the beginning of our history, the majority of Americans have stood up against tyranny, oppression, and persecution. But all too often we're reminded that while we are on the whole a good and kind people, evil is still among us. Sure, we have our skeletons in the closet to be true, and to simply state it was a different time is no excuse. But America has and continues to grow from the sins of our forefathers. We continue to evolve as a society. And I see men and women every day raising their children to be better than they themselves are. We aren't perfect, but we're trying. Evil has been part of every civilization since the beginning of time. But now we see it amplified and played out on the 24-hour news cycle. One act of terror is given more of a voice and duration than it ever would have been in the past because of Twitter, Facebook, and cable news. We must not allow that evil to define us, nor should we allow those that want to capitalize from it with more fodder or worse, entertainment or advancement. Those are the voices that stand to divide us. Good does not come from your political party. One party is not better than the other, and if that sentence makes you knee-jerk think, well, that's not true, my party's better than their party, then you need to hit the brakes and do some serious introspection. If your gut reaction is someone is lesser than you because of a political affiliation, religion, gender, or race, then you are a big part of the problem. Good can be found on both sides of the political aisle, within men and women, most religions and all races. It's not affiliations or adjectives who stand against evil. It's Americans. It's Americans who stormed the beaches of Normandy. It's Americans who line up to donate blood after a shooting. And it's Americans who drive into disaster areas and, frankly, stick our noses sometimes where they probably shouldn't be. But by God, that is what we do. We want to help. And we have stood together against evil. And it's time we do it again. Each day can be a new one in which we are defined. Each day, it is up to you and me to show the world how good we really are. That's right, I said it. It's up to you and me. It is said that evil prevails when good men do nothing. So do something. Do something. Each day, do good. Help others, encourage others, love one another, lift each other up. As we near the end of yet another political season, let's recognize the good in those that have stepped out to be public servants. Let's stop the voices of hatred and divide and rather cling to those of unity. Likely we won't hear these sentiments from our politicians, but that's okay. They don't define the American spirit. We do. Evil prevails when good men do nothing. The time to do something is now. It's up to you and me. So let's go do it. Standing proudly with my fellow Americans, I'm Seth Denson.